Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My bill is pretty easy and pretty quick. If you'll look actually at page 1, the whole bill is 2 paragraphs, and basically it talks about the bonds for pipeline construction. And it's just saying we're having problems in some counties that are requesting payment of not bonds, but cash bonds as a condition for approval for the construction of a pipeline, and some on top of that by precinct by precinct. And what the problem is in the county's boundaries, unless we want to make sure unless the county grants the permission of the person proposing the construction of the pipeline the right to approve or deny the use of the bond proceeds. We've had some situations where they make you put X amount of cash so you don't have to call on a bond, okay? You've got to make X amount of the cash proceeds in the bond and it's spent for other purposes. And then if you don't want to do or you can't conclude the pipeline construction, you go to get it back and the money's not available or the money's been used for something else. And all this does say they have to use it for the purpose that it's being required for. And if the person denies the use of the bond proceeds, that they get all their money back in full refund rather than where we have problems throughout the state in different areas where they're not getting their full amount back. That's all this does.
Members, any questions? Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for bringing this. I know it's very simple, but can you just clarify for us? The condition under which a county may ask for a bond. It does, so this does not preclude a county for asking for a bond.
That's correct.
It just ends up being
If
more
you
like
ask
a
for the cash
refundable
bond,
security deposit.
you've
Is
got
that
to
right?
say, then they have the right to deny or not deny what it's being used for. In other words, if you're doing A and they want to do B with it, they can't use that without the person who put forth the cash bonds for approval. And if they say no, then they get back the full amount of the refund, not pieces of it. That's it.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions?
I'd like to refer.
We'll proceed to
Right to
testimony. We'll
close.
allow you to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, the chair calls Vincent Cosmio with Target Resources. Thank you for being here today. I show you as Vincent DeCosmio with Target Resources, registered neutral on the bill. You're with the for House Bill 206 and neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
Thank you.
I'm reading the wrong line.
Okay.
This is a Monday after a long weekend, and I apologize. So let's start all over. I show you Vincent DeCosmio. You're for the bill, for House Bill 206. You represent Target Resources. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
You may begin.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Vincent DeCosimo, and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and Corporate Affairs at Target Resources. Target is a Fortune 500 company that is gathering, processing, and natural gas liquids and natural gas throughout the state of Texas. I am here to testify for House Bill 206, and as the chairman laid out, it's a pretty simple bill. Basically, we are supportive of that bill. In 2023, Target engaged with Callahan County to discuss a road use agreement for a project, our Grand Prix pipeline, which is a major pipeline, a couple $1 billion investment, crossed through Callahan County, and actually it crossed through 12 other counties. At that time, Callahan County had asked for us to submit a cash bond in the amount of $100,000 for all the precincts and $100,000 for the county itself. So cumulatively, we crossed through 4 precincts in the county, so it was about a $500,000 cash submittal. And it was an interesting thing because it was sort of like an ATM machine where they wanted to be able to draw down on the cash as seemed fit while the project was going on. And then when it reached a certain level, they wanted us to basically re-up the amount of cash into it, regardless of any right of process or any ability to contest what it had been spent for. So it was a bit of a challenge for us. Again, none of the other counties that we've crossed in the state of Texas at that time had asked for said types of cash assurances. Since then, a couple of other counties, Liberty being one, has a more egregious type of request. And so, you know, typically when you develop a pipeline, and we know how important pipelines are not only to where we're at in the state today, but and we talk about unleashing American energy, supplying a backbone for the grid, thermal generation, pipelines are kind of the carotid artery that we need to continue to make sure they get built in this state. And so we actually do flyovers, we do surveys before we ever begin the project. Part of that's just the normal right-of-way when you're looking at where the right-of-way is for your pipelines. And so by virtue of that, we have an accumulation of mass amounts of data on what does a roadway look like, where are road crossings, highway, you know, intersections, railroad crossings that we're going to have to cross, and we know kind of the state of the situation for the highway. What is the, you know, what does it look like the day we're getting ready to start construction? So we have a pretty good accumulation. You know, if the county wants to discuss, you know, additional terms other than what is already laid out in their current package of crossings, we certainly are willing to do that. If you think about, though, all 254 counties in the state of Texas requiring certainly even smaller companies to post cash, becomes an enormous burden on anyone who's looking at long-haul pipes throughout the state. So even further, we were told, though, that if that cash was exhausted because of damage during the process, again, they would be able to ask for additional cash to be posted at their own discretion. Targa eventually worked through that process to agree to provide a performance bond, which was in excess of around $2 million. So there is certainly a cost component to providing a performance bond. But we did go ahead because when you look at the length of time that it would take to either litigate with the county while we have a pipeline project versus the cost to go ahead and provide the performance bond, it certainly made sense because we had dedicated customers on both sides of the pipeline. After we completed the pipeline, performance bond was still there. We received an additional bill for $196,000 at the end of the day, asking for us to pay these additional dollars for where they assumed damages were, although the engineers weren't quite sure if some of the damage had pre-existed our pipeline coming through. But nonetheless, we have committed to go ahead and clean up any of the issues that were outstanding. But we are in support of this bill. There is some state law that basically almost today prohibits this kind of thing, but again, it's not really clear when we look at it under the DOT, so this clears the matter up in terms of making it very clear what counties can and cannot do. So again, we are supportive of this. We know pipelines are critical to the infrastructure of the state. Without these projects, our great state and oil and gas can be stymied, and it will be costly to continue to build pipelines. So with that, I'll close my remarks, and thank you again for the opportunity to visit with you today and to tell you the support of Targa Resources, and I'm more than willing to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. DeCosimo, for coming here today.
Thank you.
At the time when a county asks Targa or anybody for these kind of bonds, do they not provide some kind of contract? I mean, how does the the legal paperwork of this work?
When we generally, long before we obviously are starting to build, we're already in the counties, and we're meeting with county commissioners, judges, local folks, maybe school boards. There is not a standard contract that every county has. They may have something that is done for line work. They may have something done for a water line, and each one is kind of individually scoped to the county. It was unique in this situation that each precinct also was looking for something additional. So this is a part of what our right-of-way group does, and each one is really individually negotiated, Representative.
So the amount of the request relative to the path of the pipe
Correct.
and what may or may not be disturbed on
Correct.
that path. And the whole notion here is just to return the land to original use once you're through.
Correct, and it really is on county roads more than anything else, but yes, correct.
And each of the precincts in the county asked for a separate bond?
They did, sir.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time today.
Chair now calls Jim Allison. Jim, it's good to see you. We show you that you're registered on behalf of the County Judges and Commissioners Association of Texas. You're neutral on House Bill 206. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You may begin your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be with y'all again. I regret that I've not been able to visit with y'all about this before, except by email, and I appreciate Dean bringing this bill. I've been recuperating from that nasty respiratory virus, and this is my first trip over this session, so it's particularly good to be here. We're blessed to have some very large pipeline projects underway in Texas, going all the way to the Gulf Coast and the Pacific Coast. These pipelines are very large, 48 inches in diameter and larger, and the equipment required to install them weighs in excess of 200,000 pounds. Bringing the equipment in and taking it back out demolishes the county roads and bridges that they have to cross. So the county then is in contact with them about this and how to restore those roads and bridges. And this particular case that gave rise, I think, this bill, I was contacted that a county in Representative Spiller's district, Callahan County, was using an old form and attempting to require a cash bond for a project of this size. Frankly, most counties are not familiar with projects of this size. They're used to gathering lines and things of that nature, crossing their roads, but not something that requires completely rebuilding roads and bridges. I contacted them, worked with the company and the county. We reached an agreement, took out the cash bond requirement, and the project's been completed and the roads restored. But they did have to demolish a county bridge in order to bring their project in. This bill, I think, would work fine, except for the part about the entity putting up the bond, being able to deny the use of the bond. I think what the dean wants to do, and we would support, would be prohibit them from requiring a cash bond. Frankly, we don't recommend cash bonds, but occasionally a small company on a small project may have difficulty obtaining a letter of credit or a performance surety bond, and the company itself may want to use a cash bond in lieu of that. I don't think we want to stop that. I think that would be unintended. I do think that we would be very reasonable to say that the county would have to escrow the cash bond, which they should be doing now, for use on restoring the roads and bridges. In other words, put the requirement in the law as to what they could use the bond for, and then provide that if the county does not use the proceeds for the restoration of the roads and bridges, then the amount of the bond be refunded to the company. That's frankly what's in our agreement already. As I say, we don't recommend cash bonds. They frankly are inefficient, and if you're doing a statewide project, I think you can see it doesn't make much sense to tie up that much capital county by county. We found that letters of credit and surety bonds are available, much less cost to the construction company, and much more efficient. So, but we do think the county ought to be required to use the bond for the purpose for which it's intended. But we don't think you can't let the construction company say, well, I don't approve of what you used it for, so you give me my money back. I think we can, and we don't want to prohibit small companies from being able to request and utilize cash bonds. It was to get the smaller projects done. I'll be, as usual, I try to bring a solution when I have any question about a bill. And again, I apologize for not already having it drafted, but I certainly would be happy to submit some language that I think would accomplish what the dean wants, require the county to escrow the money, which I think by law they should be doing now, not use it put in the bank and use it to buy yellow equipment. And then if they don't use it for that purpose, refund it back to the company that posted it. Our agreement, by the way, allows the company to restore the roads and bridges to the county specifications. And we've had some companies take advantage of that. We definitely want the pipelines, and I want to do everything we can to keep them moving. Be happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? You mentioned performance bonds. I mean, clearly cash bonds are, I would think, out of the ordinary, but performance bonds, do you see that used quite a bit? I think the dean mentioned a performance bond as kind of a backup or an afterthought after the process has started, or certainly or Vincent did. So what's been your experience on performance bonds as opposed to cash bonds?
It's much preferable on both ends, I think, because in our agreement, the one we worked out that Targa and Callahan County eventually used, you have the county engineer and the construction company engineer do a pre-inspection report on the roads and bridges and determine what's an appropriate amount of bond for the damage that will be incurred, and then post that bond. Most companies can get a performance bond between $600 and $1,000 for up to $1 million bond, and that's the most we've ever seen, even when bridges are going to be taken out. And then once the project's completed, then the engineers come back and they re-inspect the road and bridges and determine the amount of damage that was done. In every case so far, the company goes ahead and either repairs the damage or pays the county to repair it. Not had to file on the bond yet. That's obviously the last resort, because then you're in litigation, and that's not where we want to get to. But that backs up, and we haven't had recently, but those of us like the dean and I that have been around a while, and maybe the chairman remember in the 80s, we had companies go bankrupt without completing the restructuring of the roads and bridges. Y'all have generously put some money aside for repair of county roads and bridges in oil and gas counties, and that's preparatory to bringing in resources to produce oil and gas and repair the damage from that. But the pipelines, it's a part of the project. They need to be able to build it into their budget. A performance bond, they know exactly what it's going to cost them. So that seems to be the solution. It's the one that we use.
Any questions? Representative Roththal.
Jim, it's good to see you. Although
Not you too.
in a different committee than I usually see you in. This bill would not preclude counties from asking for a performance bond. Is that right?
That's correct.
So even whether we pass this or not, counties could still make a performance bond a condition for a contract?
That's correct. Our letter of credit would usually accept either. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. But as I say, my concern is the smaller contractor, One starting out often has a difficult time of getting that type of bond. And if they're just cutting a road to bring in some gathering lines or something, we want them to be able to request and utilize a cash bond.
Members, any other questions? Thank you for your testimony, Jim.
Thank you.
This time, the chair will call Julie Range. Julie? Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
I show you registered as policy manager and you're here on behalf of the Commission Shift Action and yourself. And Range, is that
Correct.
right? Julie
Yes.
Range?
Yes.
And you are against House Bill 206, is that correct?
As written.
You may begin.
My name is Julie Range. I am the policy manager for Commission Shift Action, the advocacy partner for Commission Shift, which mobilizes the public to hold the Railroad Commission of Texas accountable to its mission through legislative involvement. And I'm testifying against HB206 as written. As written, this bill preempts counties from collecting cash bonds as a precondition of pipeline construction and it takes away the county's power to approve or deny the use of a bond. And it gives that power to the company from whom the bond was collected. And if the company decides the bond shouldn't be used, the county has to give it back. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's taking the decision-making away from the county that looks out for the public interest and gives it to the regulated company that's looking out for its private interests. So we think that's a conflict of interest. But as the judge was saying prior, I think there are ways to address it in this bill. And so the suggestions he was making, I think would improve it significantly and take that power and keep it with the counties. And so, yes. As written, I would recommend not supporting it, but with changes.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Representative Garcia.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much for being here. So is it your testimony that given the willingness to submit the language to allow for cash bonds to be held in escrow, with that language you would be in support?
Well, the main part is the part that takes the county's ability to approve or deny the use of the bond, and it gives it to the companies to approve or deny. That's the part that we have big issues with. The performance versus the cash, I'll leave to the experts to know what's the best way to do that. But the decision-making for who gets to approve the use of the bond, and if you don't get to use the bond for that purpose, well, you have to give that bond back. That it may leave the problem that the bond was there for in the first place.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I just wanted to have that clarified because he did mention changing the other piece of the language. And so when you stated that you agreed with what he said, I just wanted to make sure we had clarity
I think he said
on
that
what you
somewhere
agreed
in
with.
his testimony, but
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions of the witness? Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 206? If not, the chair recognizes Speaker Craig to close on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members, the bill does not say you can't use a cash bond. If she said it did, it says unless the construction grants. All she has to do is read the first paragraph. It does not say you can't. But I think there's some discrepancies out there and some problems that needs to be fixed, and we'll certainly work with the committee to do that. I'll be glad to answer any questions there might be.
Members, any questions? Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Dean, thank you for helping to clarify. So I'm going to ask you about the testimony that we just heard, where the question is on the person, I guess, or company, right to approve or deny the use of the bond proceeds. So the question is, if you're the company or person laying the pipe and you had to put up a cash bond, and then the county says, we need you to fix that road that you just tore up to do this, and the company can just say, no, I don't approve that use and forget it, I'm not gonna do that. So that they are the sole arbiter, the company itself.
Right, that's
So what
right.
would be the purpose of having a cash bond at all?
Well, I think the cash bond obviously was to make sure you had the money out there. But I don't think you're gonna have a problem. I think the problem was, I think in some counties it's been used elsewhere with the idea that we'll have it when it's finished, and that hasn't quite been happening.
So, first, I totally agree that that's all kinds of messed up and
Yes, sir.
that it shouldn't be that way either, but I would,
If you've got some way to
suggest-
fix it, we'll be glad to look at it, but that's the purpose, okay, is that if you do it by Mr. Morales's nameplate and you use it for something else, it ought to be able to be used for that or kept in place where it is.
would you be open to language clarifying this so that there would be a specific purpose for which it could be used, but not anything else?
If that's what you think, we'll be glad to look at it, John.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much,
Okay.
sir.
Members, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you,
Can you
Mr.
close?
Chairman. Thank you. I close.
If there's no objection, House Bill 206 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Bill's left pending.